This particular piece of history has been loved by royals and across the globe of one of the sort of, well, the things that was acceptable to be seen reading, literally. But what's happening now? As ever, let me explain. Morning, nice to see you, chums. Thank you so much as ever for your time today. And as ever, thank you for enjoying the recent video all about that wonderful public house in Millbank. As I said, oh sorry, we haven't had a wave, but lovely to have your company. It is, isn't it? It's fascinating. You just wander around and think, wow, I knew there was something special about it. You know, when you go in these places, you think there's a history here. It's a bit like my wallet. Yeah, never really opened for long, but of course when it is, it's a pivotal moment in the world of history, you know what I'm saying? Pulling your leg of course, well, no, not really, actually, no. But what's interesting is when you find these sort of gems, it is lovely to share them with you, genuinely, you know, because I'm glad that you enjoy seeing it just as much as I did actually making it, you know. The one thing I would say, I've got to be blunt with you, is quite an expensive, menu. Oh yeah, but I don't know if that's me, if pub food is that price now. But you know, you come away thinking, who can afford this? You know, they did do a chip butty. Yes, well, I relented. No, I didn't. I thought I can't force myself to pay that. It's just bread and chips. You can make it yourself, can't you? You're with me? Yes, with your own Tommy sauce. Absolutely. This is a pivotal piece, for me at least, of wonderful British history. And for over 140 years, starting out in the reign of Queen Victoria, this was the go-get-to if you were looking for, well, particularly if you were rich, titled, gentry, aristocrat, all that sort of stuff, and, you know, looking for staff. Yes, I remember when I first came to London looking for jobs, I was advised by certain agencies, you know, when you're resting as an actor and a performer and singer and all that sort of stuff, you know, get this magazine, they said, because there could be roles in there that you could do. And they were absolutely marvellous. We're talking, of course, about the Lady magazine. Now, the Lady magazine, as I say, has been going for over 140 years. A favourite with the British monarchy, and apparently, you know, it really sort of came into its own because it was seen as the sort of thing that you could have in Victorian and Edwardian times in your lounge. I know this sounds incredible when you think, doesn't it? But there were certain magazines, of course, things like the Strand magazine or, you know, Punch magazine, that were seen as a little bit salacious and not exactly in keeping with the landed gentry. The Lady was different. Not only did it feature fashion, society, socialites, all of that sort of stuff. I know I've often said this, haven't I, chums? Nothing new ever. It just goes around in a different circle. Well, the Lady lasted and lasted, and as I say, was a particular favourite with none other than the royals, featuring numerous times upon all of those years, literally, of the magazine, and always a big sellout. And apparently, according to a well-placed source, the royals did from time to time actually look for staff and place ads in there, obviously not in their names, but in looking for staff to work at the palaces like Buckingham and Windsor Castle, and some were very successful too. Well, they tried to reinvent themselves a couple of years back by, well, trying to become rather punchy and all that sort of stuff, move with the times, but it clearly didn't work. For a period, they even hired the former British Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Boris Johnson's sister, Rachel Johnson, to try and put some life into it. But Rachel was a bit of a disaster, going head first and seemingly alienating the core audience. Some might say this was the start of the mega decline. Now, here's where this gets particularly interesting, because they had a very famous, you know, I remember looking at this building when I first came to London, wonderful offices in the very heart of Covent Garden. And they were like a toy doll box, you know, it was just one of those places you think, wow, this is a nice place. And a couple of years back now, they had to sell it off for 12 million, apparently, to keep the business afloat. It's interesting, I almost wrote for the Lady magazine, but they were just, to put it bluntly, a shambles. You know, they couldn't get it into anything together. Even when you were offering them exclusives of great, you know, importance for their readers, they just could not get anything going. I don't know whether that was down to they certainly didn't want to pay, but we never got to that point, or they just seemingly thought they just knew best. But either way, nothing ever came off. So it comes as no surprise to me that the bad management, some say, and as ever we have to say allegedly, has seen a rapid decline in this. Now, you could also point out that the other issue is that, you know, it's quite an expensive magazine once a month. I think it's about £5.75, so it's not cheap. And also, you know, perhaps people see it as a little bit twee. One might suggest maybe they should have gone online a little bit more, a little bit faster, but that's the problem, isn't it, in the world that we're living in today. But it would be a shame, wouldn't it, if this sort of doyen of complete Britishness is literally wiped away, seemingly once again another great brand, a little bit like WH Smith's recently, off the high street forever and rebranding with a different name. Why do that? People won't know your brand, but this is the way they move. The lady, as I say, was loved by many members of the British monarchy. Princess Margaret was a regular, as was, of course, the late Queen Elizabeth. Unless there's somebody that can save it from liquidation and pump the money back in, will we be waving goodbye to the lady forever? What do you think? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.